Okay guys, so it's quite some time ago now that we had been looking at search engine optimization. And just to recall that search engine optimization is about coding the content of your web page, be it the HTML or the actual contents, in such a way that makes it easy for Google to figure out what your site is about so that it can match your site up with people who are looking for what you have. It's not about tricking Google into giving you more traffic. Sometimes people mischaracterize it as that. But it's not about tricking Google. You know, there's no point in getting customers that don't want to be there. When we were looking at analytics, we saw, you know, a thing called a bounce rate. I mean, if you're selling bicycles and you are attracting customers that are looking for porn, I mean, they're not going to be there very long. You know, they're not going to say, oh, do you know what? I was looking for porn, but I think I'm going to buy a bicycle instead. You know, it just doesn't happen. So there's no point in getting customers that that aren't looking for what you've got. So it's not about tricking Google. It's about helping Google figure out what your site is about so that it can match you up with people that want that. And so this is where we'd left it. We're talking about making use of the description tag. So you have the option of having a description meta tag where you can explain what the site is about. And that can help Google. The meta tag has been so overused and abused that a lot of search engines just ignore the meta tag altogether, because people just threw everything in. The purpose of the meta tag was for you to provide keywords that would help a search engine know what the page was about. But people started using that and just throwing everything in there to try and get traffic that they didn't warrant otherwise. And so it didn't go down well. So most people just started ignoring it. So you want to accurately summarize what's on the page, and you want a unique description for each page. Remember, each individual page is a separate optimization challenge. You know, if you have a website about a particular thing, yip-de-doo, but you're not going to use the same description for every single page. You want to be specific about what's in that specific page. The search engine sees pages, it doesn't see sites. So page by page by page. I'm very lazy about doing this myself. You also want to improve the structure of your URLs. That can help. So, you know, if you have hypermegaglobalcorp.com/7/9/customers/4/52197.6.html, that's not as meaningful as hypermegaglobalcorp.com/offices/Dublin.html. So the search engine can use what's in the URL to get some sort of a clue as to what the page is about, and also use the directory structure to figure out how the information is connected. So if you have a page called wheels.html in a folder called bicycles, it might, and if there's no mention of bicycles on the wheel page, it might be able to make the connection between wheels and bicycles and understand that it's about bicycle wheels. Also, the URLs are displayed in the search results. So it may be an opportunity for you to grab someone's attention with a snappy URL that they can understand, whereas a cryptic, meaningless URL might not have the same effect. So try to use words in your URLs, create a simple directory structure, and provide one version of URL to reach a document. With PHP and stuff, it's possible to have multiple ways, you know, to get places. Also, if you have a content management system, it may be that the page isn't really generated until someone goes looking for it, and that might have cryptic URLs as well. So if you have your website.com best albums of all time, that's going to be much better than 356 blah blah blah. It means more. It means something. The number means nothing. Now, you're thinking when you're making the web page, I mean, the web page is going to look the same. So what's the difference? But remember, search engines are looking for any clues they can get as to what the thing is about, and any clues as to which words are important. And if something is in the URL, well, it's probably important. So it's an opportunity that you shouldn't let go. Okay. When you're linking between pages in the sites, or you're giving out URLs to your site, it's a good idea to just have one URL for the page. Most sites, for example, you could have site.com, mypage.html, or www.site.com / mypage.html. And in most cases, both of those would work. However, in terms of links from other pages to your website, in terms of the web crawler, gathering information on those, you might have 5,000 hits a day. You might have 10,000 hits a day on the page, but 5,000 might be using that URL and another 5,000 using the bottom URL. And so if you're making a list of like what's important, what people are interested in, you split your vote there now. So you might find that you're not going to rank as highly. The one page with the one URL would rank much higher than these two separately. So they might be considered as separate pages. And that wouldn't be good. So bear that in mind. So the main question you have to ask, is it site.com or www.site.com? Or also you may have a few domains pointing to the same place. So if I had colinrepublic.com, or I had republicofcolin.com, and I decided, well, people get confused now, so what I'll do is I'll make both of those domain names point to the same place. I'd be splitting my vote then. So both of my pages, the one page might appear twice as two separate pages, 5 pages in from Google. Whereas if it was just one site, one page with one URL, I might have been on the first page. So same with your domain name. Your domain name can help people or help a search engine figure out what your site is about. So any keywords that appear in your domain name are going to be weighted very highly in the algorithm. So if I have handmadeirishcandles.com, well, if someone is looking for candles, that's going to rank fairly high. If someone is looking for Irish candles, it's going to rank very, very high. If it was called, ephemeral.com, and then in the body of the text it was exactly the same. So one was ephemeral.com and one was handmadeirishcandles.com. Someone's looking for handmade Irish candles, or even Irish candles. The one with candles in the URL is going to rank higher than the one that doesn't. Should also maybe try and avoid very generic domain names. Now, having said that, I used to shop at books.com for a long time, and I thought it was a great domain name. Amazon has nothing to do with books in terms of a name, but it's a brand. So you want to, if you are going to use a domain name, make sure it's meaningful and sensible if possible. I think we mentioned this already, but it was such a long time ago now. It's certainly, even if I'm repeating myself, it bears worth repeating. If your product or service is location specific, then you may want to consider a geographical domain name. So you could see how handmade Irish candles, it might make sense, because that's something that's being identified as being specifically Irish, that it might use .ie. So .com would apply to any could be anywhere. The .ie could conceivably be anywhere as well, but by saying .ie, you're saying this is a website in Ireland. It could be hosted, in Timbuktu. That doesn't matter. Well, actually, it does matter. But. So you could see for your handmade Irish candles, .ie, the Irishness would be emphasized there. So if you had something about college, let's say college textbooks, right? If you've collegetextbooks.com and collegetextbooks.ie, if someone is in Ireland searching for college textbooks, that .ie one is going to edge ahead of the .com one, because that .ie is specific to Ireland and that person is in Ireland. And so you'd find the same with France or Spain, whatever. Now, it may be that you don't want your product to be associated with a particular place, and they might go for the .com or the .net or whatever. But if you know that all of your customers are going to be in Ireland, then maybe .ie is the way to go. It's also possible for the search engines to work out where your website is physically hosted. So my republicofcolin.ie could be hosted in Florida. That could hurt me if I really, really wanted to get Irish traffic. So if all of my customers were in Ireland, it might be better for me to host my website in Ireland, because that would rank that little bit higher than the exact same website but hosted in Florida. So that's something that can make a difference as well. Also, there are language settings. If my web page was in Polish and hosted in Ireland with a .ie, and you were a Polish person, had your browser set to Polish, or Google knew you were Polish and you were searching for something in Ireland, it would factor all those things in together. So language is important as well. And obviously, if you're Googling something in France, let's say the search terms were the same and the keywords were the same, a page that's in French would rank higher than the same page in English, all other things being equal, if you're in France. Similarly, if you're in Ireland, web pages in English will rank higher. Be interesting to see if two pages with the same keywords and stuff, if the one in Irish would rank higher than the one in English in Ireland. But that seems unlikely, actually. No. Also have to make your site easier to navigate. Navigation is very important for search engines. So you build your home page and you're going to have maybe 5 or 6 sections in there, and then you might have subsections under there. It depends obviously on the size of your website. I mean, Amazon has a web page for each possible product. They're not sitting there waiting to be used. Those pages are generated out of the database dynamically when someone goes looking for them. But for most websites, the content is sitting there waiting for someone to come along. Okay? Breadcrumbs show someone where they've already been. That can help them. Also allow for the possibility of part of the URL being removed. So if I have republicofcolin.com/bicycles/rally/tires.html. If someone does republicofcolin.com/bicycles/rally/ and says nothing, that should give them some information. It should give them the rally page or whatever. So account for that possibility. And you probably need to prepare 2 sitemaps, one for users and one for search engines. There's a specific format you can use where you can say to the search engine, here's search engine, here's everything you need to know about this site. This is how you'll find your way around this site. And search engines can go look for that and then use that to navigate through and figure out where things are and to make assumptions about the connections between things. You make one for humans and one for machines. You want to create a hierarchy, and you want to use text for navigation. It's very tempting once you discover the joy of Photoshop to create wonderful, sexy buttons with drop shadows and super cool fonts and backgrounds and bevels and all sorts of stuff. But that means nothing to a search engine, typically. So use text. You're going to have a HTML sitemap and an XML sitemap for the machines. You also want a useful 404 page. 404 is what you get when someone requests a page that isn't there. There's a special HTML file that they see. On a bad day, it just says, oh, that page doesn't exist, feck off. On a good day, it says, the page you're looking for isn't there. Here's a sitemap, or you can, use this search bar here to find what you're looking for, or perhaps you're looking for this or this or this. There's no point in saying, you screwed up, feck off, because they will feck off. They'll go somewhere else. So you want to make the 404 page useful. So a home page and a sitemap. So the sitemap thing, you can look up the format of that, but it's an XML document that you give to the search engine to say what your site looks like and where everything is. You need to make sure that your HTML or XHTML is formatted properly. So when you're doing SOF 6007 and the lecturer was giving out about, oh, you have to close off your tags, but when you look at it in the browser, it looks fine anyway. Well, remember, there's an awful lot of stuff out there. And so Google has to try and figure out what's top quality and what's not. And if the HTML is dodgy, well, that says to Google, this maybe isn't a professional website, this isn't a professional job. Similarly, if the spelling is wrong, it can say, this isn't top quality stuff. And so it'll rank lower. So you need to make sure it's done right. You want to use CSS for your styles and then have the content on a separate page. That point would probably have been hammered home to you in SOF 6007 anyway. Not only is it neater, but if your keywords are in the HTML document, the content might be 70% of the text and the HTML markup might be 30%. If you have your styling information in there, then, or if you've used, if you've done things really old school and used a table to lay out your page and font tag and stuff like that, well, then maybe the content is looking maybe like 20% of the page and the other 80% is how it looks. You've really diluted then your keywords. What few keywords you had are now a part of the 20% of the content of the page. So you don't want to hide your content under styling gobbledygook and gibberish. This is a hard one to believe, but it's true, If you offer quality stuff, people will eventually find you. If you're useful, if you give people what they're looking for, you will eventually get the traffic and the recognition you deserve. Especially when there's so much out there. I mean, an awful lot of sites now. I mean, the internet is very big. But maybe it's 5 times bigger than it actually is. It seems to me there's, one original page or one original site, and then, 4 copies of it somewhere. you know, just you see a lot of stuff just copied and pasted from other places that has no value. Google really values originality. If something is just a copy of text somewhere else, well, what's the point of that? Google might as well just send the person to the original place where you copied it from. And if there's anyone that can detect, you know, that a page has been copied and pasted from somewhere else, it's Google. So, you know, if you're just copying and pasting stuff from somewhere else, it really has no value. You could just link to it, you know. And Google values unique, exclusive content. You want to write text that's easy to read. You want to stay organized around a particular topic as well. If you have a very long page where you're talking about 5 separate things, that one page might get less traffic than 5 short pages that are on topic put together. So the 5 short pages might get 2,000 hits each. The big long page that has all the same stuff in it, you might think, well, it's much more useful. It's got all of it. That might get less than 10,000. Because if someone is looking for that one specific thing, one of the 5 things, that page isn't going to rank as highly as one page about that one thing. So consider that when you're structuring your content. Everything that we've said, though, shouldn't stop you thinking about humans. You should be producing your content for people and not worrying about the search engines. You're not making content for search engines. You're making it for people. So you must bear that in mind. The anchor tag is what you use to link from one place to another. You know, you have a href equals whatever. You know, click here in an anchor tag for information about bicycle tires is not nearly as useful as opening the tag bicycle tires information is here. You know, bicycle tires information is also available. Having that bicycle tires in the anchor tag makes it clear then that that page is about bicycle tires, and that associates that page with those terms. So this is what I'm saying here. So see my list of best albums is much better than click here to see a list of my best albums. Because list of best albums now is going to associate those keywords with that destination page. Whereas here means nothing to a search engine. Now, one of the biggest problems people have, or I suppose one of the biggest problems machines have with people's web pages is images. So if you have a website and, you know, we say a picture is worth 1,000 words, if you have a really, really cool image that sums up everything your website is about, let's say you could find such an image, and you go to your web page and you're making that image do all the talking. Well, when a human goes see that, they see, okay, I see the image, I get what that's about, cool. A search engine just sees a JPEG. Google is not, you know, looking at inside JPEGs to see what's in them. It's just, that's an image, okay, there's an image there in that page. That's all it knows about it. So that's why it's very important to use the alt attribute. We use the alt attribute to allow people who don't see very well, to allow their machines to tell them what the image is about. We also use the alt attribute to tell machines what the image is about. So an alt attribute that says, you know, main homepage picture is meaningless. You know, picture of cool dude holding a phone and a case to protect it, you know, says something about what's in the image. So it's important to use the alt tag properly. A lot of people like to put the images in a special folder, just put all your images in one folder and then leave them there. I don't know if that makes much of a difference to search engines. I guess it must, or Google wouldn't have told us to do it. You want to use brief but descriptive file names. So, you know, image1.jpg, image2.jpg, image3.jpg, image4.jpg. Again, that's a missed opportunity. You know, fastcar.jpg tells Google something about the content of that image. redhoodie.jpg tells Google something about the content of the image. And so it can use that. Avoid putting important text in graphics only. This is the most important thing to remember about using images. If you, for example, have your navigation using buttons, super cool buttons that you did in Photoshop. So you have, you know, menswear, ladieswear, kids, homewares, contact us. If you put those in image tags, so if you put those in image files, so if you have an actual JPEG with the word, you know, menswear in it, Google won't see that. It just sees a JPEG. There was a time when, if you wanted your site to look nice, maybe you had to do it that way and just suffer the consequences. But there's no need for that nowadays. You have CSS that you can lay things out very nicely. You also have Google Fonts, which allows you to have any kind of font you want. So there's no real reason to do that. But it makes it impossible for someone for a machine then to see what's going on. Okay, alt tag, alt, text, meta tag. Use heading tags then to emphasize the important text. So again, in SOF 6007, your lecture would have been banging on about H1 is for this, H2 is for this, H3 is for this. And your lecturer would have kept making the point that if a H3 tag puts something in black, bold, in this font at this size, it'll look that way, but it's doing much more than, say, the equivalent CSS making a div with that font and that color and that size in bold. H1, H2, and H3, they say something about the structure of the document. So the H1 is the heading, you know, the main heading in your document. If you have 4 H1s, and inside in those there are several H2s, that's saying that that H2 is a subsection of the stuff there. So it makes explicit the structure of the document and the connections between the sections. Also, if a keyword is in a heading, then that must be a pretty important thing for that page. So if bicycle wheels is a H2, then that's saying that bicycle wheels are very important to this page. Putting bicycle wheels in something that looks nice but isn't in fact a H2 won't have the same effect in terms of the rankings. So it's important to give those indications as to the structure of the document. Be sure to use robots.txt to tell the crawler where not to bother going. So there's lots of crap on the web already. If you say to a search engine, well, don't bother going to these pages, I mean, if you think they're crap, that's probably good enough for the search engine. It's not going to bother. If you wrote it and you think they're no good yet. Generally, though, you know, if you have a website that's going to have 100 pages and you've only got 10 done and the other 90 are like under construction or something, it's best not to publish them and not to link to them at all, because that 90 will drag down the value of your website. If you do have them, make sure you tell the robots not to go there, and so you might avoid taking that particular hit. Also, robots.txt is completely, you know, robots is voluntary, and certainly if you have stuff on your website that you don't want anyone to see, telling the robots not to index it is insane. Do you mean if you have your super secret plan for world domination and you put it up on the web and think it's going to be safe because you've told the robots not to go look at it? Well, no. I mean, you know, it's out there in plain view for everyone to see. A no follow is an indication to the crawler not to follow a particular link. Generally what people do, if there's comments on there, if there's a comments section on their page, they'll say to the crawler, there'll be a tag saying don't follow any of this. So if there's a comment and there's a link back to someone else's site, the web crawler won't follow that. And the reason you don't want it to do that, if that's linking back to some African prince who has millions that he needs to give you, or some porn site, or some Viagra site, well, that's going to harm the reputation of your site, because you have links to this dodgy site. So you need to make sure that doesn't happen. If your site is specifically configured for, well, if you have a mobile version of your site, you should let Google know about that. Okay, and that can the sites that are designed specifically for mobile, there are fewer of those, so you have potential there to get a lot of traffic if Google knows about you. Okay, and typically they might have a slightly different URL. You often see like m.rte.ie instead of www.rte.ie. So things like that. You want to run a desktop and a mobile version of your site, and you want to redirect mobile users to the correct one. Often you can have some code that'll detect either on a mobile or on the a big screen, and then redirect them from one or the other. Or if you're very good, you will have the CSS switch based on the features, based on the properties of the page, the device. You can use a different CSS file. So it might be the exact same site with different CSS. That's actually quite hard to pull off, though. Most people actually just make two versions. But ideally, you want one version of your website and then have it adapt to whatever device someone has. That's not that easy to do. If you're in DWeb, you'll do a whole module on that kind of thing. So yeah, so I think we'll leave it there for today. So I'll see you again next week, and then next Monday will be our last class. There's no need to come to labs, but I'll probably be there if you're looking for me anyway.